Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale Avatar figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at both Jake Sully and Neytiri from Avatar: The Way of Water. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I've popped a link to their site in the description, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Avatar figure review goes live on the channel. Normally, when I'm reviewing two figures in the one video, I shoot the unboxings simultaneously. I do them together, that way we're not doing the same thing twice, and it just ends up being more efficient. Unfortunately, this time, that simply wasn't possible, because these boxes are bloody massive. I tried it, I couldn't get this to look good with two of these huge boxes in frame. As for the box art for Jake Sully, up front we've got an image of the actual figure, but almost sorta not really, because they've photoshopped out his visible joints at the shoulders. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Yes, he looks better this way, but then why is the actual figure not like that? He should have 100% been seamless. We've got an Avatar logo below that, but no mention of Way of Water for some reason. And then this splashy looking wave effect that's framing the artwork. Down below, his name and a couple of logos. On the side of the box, the artwork from the front cover spills over the edge, another Avatar logo, and his name once again. Around the back, warnings and legal information, as well as their store locations, and some very colourful Pandora artwork. This is probably the same stuff that was behind Jake Sully around the front, I would imagine. I'm curious to find out what's going on underneath this slipcover. Whoa, I guess I forgot how big Hot Toys Avatar figures are, because this guy takes up almost the entire clam tray. He's an enormous 1/6 scale piece. I have the first Jake Sully, so I shouldn't be all that surprised, but it's been a while since I've seen him whole like this. For those of you who don't know, the blue plastic they used back in the day for their first attempt at an Avatar figure, it disintegrated, it cracked and crumbled. So my Jake Sully from the first movie is in a plastic bag in a bunch of pieces. Surely they've learnt their lesson from that first one, and now the plastic they've used this time is a hell of a lot more durable. Right? Yeah, I wish I could say by the end of this video we'd know. We won't. We literally just have to wait a couple of years and find out, which makes me very nervous. On the side of the box, we've got this wave effect top and bottom, and an Avatar logo in the middle. Still not a Way of Water one. Oh, that's an absolutely stunning piece of artwork. We've got an Avatar A with a bunch of Avatar creatures floating around in the middle, and his name down below. Enough about the box though, I want to get this figure out here. I'm actually pretty bummed out that I won't be able to do a comparison back to the original Jake Sully. I was planning to, but the years have just not been kind to the blue plastic they used back then. First in-hand impressions for the new Jake Sully. So far so good, loving the paint applications and the size of this thing. What we're going to do now is move on to Neytiri. We're going to move a lot quicker now because the box is almost identical to Jake's. Up front, we've got an image of the actual figure once again, with the shoulder joints photoshopped out. Then an Avatar logo and her name down below. On the side of the box, another Avatar logo and the artwork spilling over the edge from the front cover. No need to look at the back, it's exactly the same as Jake's. All of the artwork on the inner box also identical to Jake's. Underneath the slipcover, an open window showcasing the figure inside. I wonder if Neytiri is going to be a little bit shorter than Jake. She looks maybe a little, but we'll find out in the comparison segment for sure anyway. First in-hand impressions for her. She's, surprisingly, and I wasn't expecting this, a little bit heavier than Jake is. What we're going to do now is get all of their accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look and everything they come with. For the sake of simplicity, Jake's accessories, Neytiri's. If you don't have room for the massive diorama bases that come with the deluxe versions of Jake and Neytiri, you could just get the standard. The only things you're going to be missing out on are the bases, I believe. But you will be missing out because these things are just so good to look at. We've got the sand undulations in the middle, then the purple and blue shading around that middle section, the plants, which are done in translucent plastic, and these PVC, like, ferns that stick up off the main sculpt work for the base. They are the same underlying sculpt between them, but they've changed out the plants per character, so it doesn't look like it's the exact same base at first glance. Now, you see this rock right here? It looks suspiciously removable. And that's because it is removable. If you don't quite trust the base to hold Jake or Neytiri upright in the collection without some kind of waist clamp, well, you can take the rock off, install this translucent flight pole, and now you've got a spring-loaded waist clamp. I don't think you have to worry about this doing damage to either of the two figures, because they've got bare sculpted plastic bodies. Around the back, we've got a USB-C port and a 2-option power switch. What do I mean by that? You will see in just a second. Plugging in the USB-C cable, flicking the switch to the right side with the base facing away from us. Now all of the plants that are translucent are illuminated. I need to find a way to have this thing lit up in the collection long term because now it looks even better with the LEDs turned on. But flicking the switch in the other direction, that's to the left, now it's got a pulsating effect. It looks more flickery on camera because I'm shooting in 60 FPS, but in person, it's a hell of a lot smoother. While the bottom part of the base is the same between them, the plants are very different on Neytiri's base. This mushroom tree of sorts at the back adds some width and depth to it, and we've got this red coral which is heavily textured that also adds some depth to the base. So you're going to need more room in the cabinet to accommodate Neytiri's versus Jake's. I've also just now realized, because I accidentally bumped it, that this rock is also removable. So does that mean you could flip the base around and have the flight pole at the back? I mean, you could, but then again, the power switch is going to be very visible right up front if you do flip the base around. Plugging the USB-C cable in, flicking the switch to the right first. Yeah, I prefer Neytiri's base. Her flora just looks a lot more interesting to me. Let's try the pulsating effect. It is going to look flickery once again on camera, but it brings some life to the base. Once I figure out where these are going to go in my collection, yeah, I am going to have them powered, and I'll always be using the pulsating effect. Moving on to Jake's bladed weapons. He comes with a knife. I'll show you where this stores on him a little bit later. It's prickly, so do watch out for that. I wish there was some silver chipping and dry brushing on the blade, but I've got no complaints with the way the handle has been painted. The lighter brownish orange, and then look at that red shading up top. The hatchet has some orange shading for the tip. It's quite spiky as well, and you can remove the top blade piece. The reason why that comes off is so that you can slide this into the sheath on his outfit. They've even added some lighter brown dry brushing on what would be the back leather part of the handle. The grenade is devoid of any speckling or pitting effects or washes. It's so clean. This looks like a lightweight plasticky thing. If they'd have added all of that extra detail to it, it would have come across as a believable shrunk down, heavy looking 1/6 scale grenade. As it stands, I'm going to store this in his vest and it's never going to be seen again. I'll show you where this goes. So they've not forgotten how to do silver chipping because there it is, right there on the sight up top, on the charging handle, on top of the gun, and we've got this oil stain effect black wash on the gunmetal pieces. There's some airbrush shading on the front and back grips, plus some white dry brushing to make that look heavily weathered. You can move the charging handle back, it's spring-loaded. The magazine comes out, but there's no opening up top for the bullets to go in the gun. We'll just ignore that. You can see straight through the magazine with the painted bullet details inside of it. But this is my favorite detail. There's a functional dust cap on the back of his scope. There's some glossy black paint around the back underneath that dust cap, where around the front there's some metallic purplish blue, and a translucent piece of plastic in this sight on the side of it. When it comes to hands for Jake, we've got a relaxed open palm hand for the left and a trigger finger hand for the right. Why not 2 trigger finger hands and 2 relaxed open palm hands? They're being stingy again. Only 1 splayed out finger hand. You can make out the fingernails sculpted in, some wrinkling, vein work, and there's a decent level of skin texture both sculpted and painted. Oh, and installed on him, right out of the box, 2 gripping hands. The only thing that comes to mind when I look at Neytiri's bow is, whoa. This thing is... I'm running out of adjectives to describe how big stuff is, but it's gigantic. From one end to the other, it takes up almost the entire frame, even when I'm all the way zoomed out like this. Watch out for the what would be feathers. This is all sculpted plastic. They feel a little bit spindly and fragile. These tassels are sculpted, and I like the way they just droop down. If they were actual tassels, they may flare out and look a little bit crazy. Like this. It sits down, but you are going to have to work with it. This is a real elastic string, and when you pull it back, see how the arms for the bow flex? That's something I wouldn't use all the time. Don't leave this string pulled back because that's a bit too much pressure to be putting on this sculpted plastic. Around the front, we've got some markings and some lighter dry brushing in this grip to make that look dirty and grimy. This bow is well used and probably well loved at this point. But check out that feather with the sculpted in strands and the metallic finish to it. Heed my warning. Don't put this in Neytiri's sheath on her back and then set her down, because I did it, and this outer feather snapped clean off. There's a super thin connection point where it's attached to the rest of the sculpt work for this little braid thing. Why didn't they go with 1/6 scale, shrunk down, miniaturized feathers? Sculpted plastic, thin pieces, not my favorite thing in the world. The detail on the handle is perfect. Also, no complaints, just like Jake's knife. And they've added some weathering on the blade. They should have done this for his, but I'm glad it's present on Neytiri's. And it looks like this blade has been used a lot. There's plenty of little divots sculpted in. You would not want to be hit by one of these arrows. They are devastatingly large. Just like the bow, they take up almost the entire frame. They're sculpted out of this semi-flexible plastic, so as long as you're not putting too much pressure on them, I don't think you're going to break them. There's even a notch around the back for you to slot that elastic string into. Not important at all, I'm just curious to see if this bow is functional, so pulling it back and releasing, 100% this bow is functional. You can, I guess, use it maybe for stop motion, having her fire arrows like that. And lastly, a full array of hands for Neytiri, and pairs at that, unlike Jake. We've got 2 arrow pulling back bowstring hands, 2 gripping hands. The fingers are really soft, so you don't have to worry about heating them up first before you pry open the grip and install the bow inside of either of these gripping hands. I'm also noticing or remembering that real Na'vi only have 4 fingers and toes versus avatars, they've got 5. So it was just Jake they were stingy on. For Neytiri, we get 2 relaxed open palm hands instead of 1, already installed on her right out of the box. What we're going to do now is get Jake and Neytiri themselves out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. Well, I have popped their weapons in the sheaths and pouches on their outfits just to complete their looks. I love these. they're flawed. Like, they're inherently flawed. The visible joints, a huge turnoff for a lot of collectors, including me. Are they good enough to make up for the visible joints? That's going to be up to you. I know it's a cop-out answer, I'm so sorry, but only you can answer it. For me, yeah, probably. Proportions are spot on for both of them, and we've got Neytiri this time. For the first movie, we never got Neytiri, we just had Jake Sully on his own. So it finally makes sense to get a Hot Toys Avatar figure because you're not going to have just a random one-off Na'vi in the collection. Now we can have husband and wife displayed side by side. Paint applications wise from a distance, they still look really good, and the head sculpt for Jake Sully is a marked improvement over the original. Do I have a preference out of the two? Actually, yeah, but I'll let you know which one that is when we're wrapping up the video in the conclusion segment. So we'll start off with Jake first, then we'll move on to Neytiri. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Jake Sully's head sculpt. Compared to the one from the first movie, yes, the original is more expressive with the furrowed brow look and the open mouth and the vein work even. I like all of that. But I think the likeness is coming through more for me with the new sculpt. And we've got moving eyes with this one, whereas the original didn't have that feature. Even though there's a massive ugly seam around the back, which isn't present on this new Jake Sully sculpt. If you're curious about compatibility, I did try and pop this new sculpt on the body, but there's a clip mechanism that attaches the new head sculpt to the neck, whereas with the OG, it's a simple ball joint connector. So without removing that clip, which I'm not game enough to try out because the blue plastic that it's made out of is notoriously quite fragile, you're shit out of luck. It isn't compatible right out of the box. I'm not mad at that because I'd never be using that head sculpt anyway. I already said this one I think is the better of the two. Does it look like Jake Sully though? From almost every angle, I can see the likeness to a blue Na'vi version of Sam Worthington. There's a really fine level of skin texture sculpted on the surface, but not much paint. Well, there's plenty of it, but there's no speckling is what I'm trying to say. We've got the white dots, they don't count as speckling. There's the markings, they're done in a darker blue, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more variation with that flecking of paint. That's what they usually do for skin texture. There's some shading inside his ears, and a feathered edge for the sculpted hair. The sculpted braids are a departure from what we saw with the 1.0 sculpt. This was sculpted to around the middle of the back of his head, then we had actual rooted hair for the braids. The hair tail is still real or synthetic hair, and we've got the white bits in the middle of it, but everything else is hard, solid sculpted plastic. I don't mind them doing this. They could have used rooted hair braids where the hair tie is. Not necessary. Making this all out of the same material means that it's consistent. We don't have a finish mismatch between the top and bottom of his hair pieces. There is, however, a slight issue I have with the paint applications. It's just black, but it looks like there's some shading to it. That isn't shading. That's oxidization of the surface coating they've used to protect the paint applications on his hair. It happens usually over time, but this figure isn't that old and it's already happening. I literally just unboxed him. You can wipe it off. We'll address it again in the pros and cons segment. I'm curious to see what he looks like with his eyes in different positions. I like the stock one, with the eyes looking straight forward. His brow isn't as furrowed as the original, but he still looks pretty serious. So this is how it works. We've got this clip mechanism receiver piece on the inside, and it's keyed. We've got little pieces that slide into those side channels to keep everything properly aligned. The eyes, they're individually articulated. You do not need the tool for this. They are massive, so you can just use your finger, no problem. I'm personally partial to some side eye and looking up ever so slightly. That, for me, really brings out the likeness in this sculpt. Let's pop it back on the body and try out some rapid-fire eye position tests. Ooh, really good. I like this one. I think that I'm going to go with this long-term in the display. Head tilt forward, eyes looking up through his brow, just off to one side. That is the maximum side eye you can achieve with this. They don't go any further left or right, unfortunately. It's not bad. I wish they went more to the side, though. The benefit of having them facing this way is now you can angle the sculpt so you'll always be showing off his earpiece. It's not removable, for those of you wondering. I am so sorry, I had to try it. Now he's looking very shocked. His eyes are pointing straight down. This would work for a variety of different poses. None that I'm ever going to use. Another contender for me. Looking up, he comes across very serious. Maybe someone's threatening his kids, and this is the look he's giving them. Now, the throat mic that says THRT on it for throat, I assume, is adjustable. You can move it up and down, and the necklace is as well, which means they're removable. So if you take the head sculpt off, you can then remove both of those pieces if you don't want them there. There's quite a lot of asymmetry going on here. We've got different bicep wraps on one side versus the other. These feathers are sculpted plastic. This tassel is sculpted. Then a grenade in this pouch on his harness on one side, but not the other. Buckles aren't functional as far as I can tell, and they're sculpted plastic. They're not made of die cast. You can remove the grenade, but you already saw that in the accessory segment. The knife slots into this sheath, all sculpted plastic. I'm worried about the sheath and the strap moving around constantly as you're posing him, because the last thing you'd want is any brown paint transfer from this piece of PVC plastic onto his sculpted PVC plastic torso. Something to watch out for when you're posing him. The magazines, if that's what these, I think that's what they're supposed to be, are not removable from the pouches. This is all sculpted plastic. The wrappings for his forearms are adjustable. You can move them up and down. When you bring them down to cover up his wrist pegs, which is my preferred display option, they get gappy. Just adjust them. Once you get them dialed in just right, they shouldn't look overly gappy, but they will help you disguise that wrist peg seam. Around the back, we've got the rest of the harness vest situation going on. His hair tail is hanging down the braid, more dots, the tiger stripe-like pattern, and his hatchet on this sculpted plastic belt holster piece. How would he remove this in the movie? Like, if you think about it, in 1/6 scale, you take off the top part of the hatchet, then you can take it out of the holster. But in universe, how is this removable? Very strange. It's not the most secure fit in the world either. If you pull it all the way to one side, then it doesn't move around as much. But if you have it in the middle, this thing is going to be flopping around all over the place. Hot Toys, why are you still using this ancient pin and hinge style joint for your single bend elbows and knees? It's been done to death at this point. I've seen companies at lower price points do way better than this. More range and look better than whatever the heck this monstrosity is. They didn't even try and disguise it. There's no skin texture sculpted on the surface. That is plain, unpainted blue plastic. Let's talk about hiding some of the other joints. The seams at the shoulders, you can use the straps to hide them. The one at the midsection, this strap for the vest, the buckle, can hide that just fine. The joint at the waist, you can move the skirt up. But the joints at the hip area, they are always going to be visible. The wrist pegs, we can take care of them, no problem. The knees, on the other hand, also always visible. So you've got a little sculpted belly button. And plenty of skin texture absolutely everywhere, except for on those bloody joints. The skirt is made up of two different materials. This is a textured, just straight fabric. The edges are tattered, and that's a real raw edge, so try not to interact with it too much, otherwise you are going to see some loose threads start to appear. Then we've got some strings hanging off these tassels. It's wrapped around his tail, and yes, he does have a visible avatar booty. The tail is wired. I wouldn't use this too often. I've not had an issue with my Avatar 1 tail as yet, but you can see the breathy holes. This is like an old school, heavy duty rubber style material with a wire inside of it. Coming down to the legs, and the legs, and the legs, they are massive. That's what I'm trying to say. We've got the tiger stripe pattern and 5 toes. The reason why I point this out is because it's different compared to Neytiri. You'll see what I mean. Do we have any sculpted detail on the underside? Not really, just a little bit of skin texture. Neytiri's turn. Starting off with her head sculpt. Likeness-wise, I don't think it's quite as strong as Jake's. That one is maybe like a 9 out of 10 sculpt for me. I'd rate Neytiri an 8 out of 10 perhaps. I can still see a blue CGI Zoe Saldana from most angles, like right there. From others, not as much. She's got moving eyes, we'll touch on them in a second. The paint applications are exactly the same as Jake's. We've got that lighter blue skin tone, then the darker blue tiger stripe patterns, and the really sharp white dot work. The only complaint I have with this sculpt is, see that right there? The seam line, where the earlobe piece has been attached to the rest of the ear? That's just lazy sculpt work. Surely they could have done that in one single piece. Can you see that? Right there? Her forehead is visible through the slots in this sculpted headband piece. Why do you get lazy with some of the sculpt work, but then you blow me away with stuff like that? It's just crazy to think that they're having to pick and choose where they spend their budget with R&D. Her hair braids are all sculpted plastic, and these feathers are sculpted as well. Interestingly enough, she doesn't have the same weird oxidization issue that Jake has. It could be because her braids are skinnier, there's more of them, and I think they're made of a different material as opposed to PVC, which is what they went with for Jake. We'll just have to wait and see. Maybe eventually they'll start to oxidize in the same way. Let's do a likeness hunt. We'll do rapid fire eye position tests and see if we can't bring out that Zoe Saldana likeness. Access isn't as good as Jake's sculpt. For Neytiri, I would suggest maybe using the tool, trying to wedge your finger inside the head sculpt and then move the eyes around. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but as you just saw, it is achievable. There's a reason why I like side-eye so much. It looks way more dynamic than the eyes looking straight forward because you can adjust the expression. Head tilt forward means serious, head tilt up, more playful. The issue with Neytiri with a head tilt forward is the hair is contoured to the shape of her back, so when you move the head forward, you can see that curvature to the hair. Depending on the angle, it looks a little bit unnatural. Ooh, yes, head tilt forward, eyes looking up at us. Neytiri's pissed off. She could be maybe aiming her bow and arrow. This eye position would work perfectly for that. I also just discovered this. If you angle the neck forward, not the head sculpt, that accommodates for the hair being contoured to her back. Now it's not as gappy. It's not the same as this. Still, you could use that neck joint and kinda meet this eye position halfway. Oh, I really like this one. Not just because she comes across sassy, but now that seam for her earlobe is hidden. You're never going to see it. Front on, if the eyes were in a fixed position looking straight forward, it would be so visible. Now with the eyes off to one side, I've solved the issue from at least this one angle. I'd still prefer if it was removed though. Before moving eyes, this was how they used to paint eyes for female characters. It looked ridiculous, so stupid. No white above or below her iris or pupils, just straightforward, dead-eyed stare. Never going to be a display option I would even remotely consider for my Neytiri. Her throat mic, it also says THRT for throat on it. Height adjustable, totally removable. Oh, and this eye position, just a neutral one, but looking up a touch. Why did they not paint female characters' eyes like this? The dead-eyed stare was a bizarre choice. Her front, what do I even call this thing? Beaded shirt or beaded vest of sorts is all sculpted plastic, except for these cables that connect and loop underneath her tail. This is a wired metallic material. They've used this stuff previously for Wonder Woman's Lasso of Truth, if I'm remembering correctly. And for those wondering, yes, there is a little bit of sculpted but unpainted anatomy underneath this netted front top piece. Her arms, visible joints, her midsection, visible joint, hips, visible, knees, visible. This wrist peg is hidden, the other isn't. But they've done something with Neytiri that they didn't even bother to do for Jake. They've continued this stripe over the top of that single bend elbow. But they didn't do that for the other side. There's a stripe right there. Why didn't you do the same thing you literally just did on the left side? This armband is height adjustable. You can move it up and down or remove it if you don't want it there. Her skirt is pissing me off. It free floats around. It falls down constantly. There's no friction. The body is quite smooth. It's textured, but that's not enough to keep this thing from sliding down. If only they had adhered it around the front. It doesn't need to be adjustable. If you lock it in at the front, you'd still be able to move these straps to disguise her hip joints, which I recommend you do because nobody wants to see those visible hip joints. Around the back, this tassel is just sitting on top of the belt. Make sure you pull it down, it likes to ride up. And she's got a sheath for her knife that is removable. The tail, it's got this wrap on it. This is sculpted plastic. It's actually part of the main sculpt work for the tail, and it's wired just like Jake's is. Her skirt is made of this heavily textured, thin, lightweight, pleated purple fabric. We've got a pattern on her belt and then tassel down the front. You can see there's some holes cut out through it, and there's a tassel on the end of it. Is it just me, or does this look like hair? Is it the hair of her victims? I don't know. Let me know if you know what that is down in the comments. Maybe they mentioned it in the movies and I've since forgotten. This strap for her calf is not adjustable. That is fixed in place. You cannot move it whatsoever. Then we come down to her really creepy alien Na'vi looking feet. So, 4 toes, 4 fingers, that's how you know she is not an avatar. This is an actual Na'vi. On the underside, way more sculpted detail as compared to Jake. We've got this rippling effect to the skin, and that makes it look kind of realistic and nasty. If only the legal information wasn't printed on top of the feet. Then you could have her in a running pose, and you could show off all of that sculpted detail. For a quick side-by-side comparison, they look so good standing next to each other. Almost good enough for me to forget about the issues I have with the visible joints. Almost. But not quite. I still don't like the visible joints. That's the one thing that's throwing these pieces off for me. It's not proportions, I'll tell you that for free. They look very proportionate, accurate to Na'vi, shrunk down to 1/6 scale. And the shades of blue are subtly different between them. Neytiri is more of a greenish blue, whereas Jake is a lot cooler in tone. It's not super obvious on camera. In person, it's a lot more so. It's a bit awkward. I completely forgot about movie magic earlier when I said this comparison wasn't going to be possible. The figure on the left isn't real. That's just a snapshot from my Jake Sully Avatar 1 review. I'm assuming the heights are the same. Just ignore the heights because I've superimposed the figure on the left in the shot there. Jake Sully from the first movie, I think, has the more interesting outfit of the two. I prefer the new head sculpt and the moving eyes with this 2.0 of sorts from the second movie. But in a perfect world, they would go back and redo Jake Sully from the first movie using this new body with sturdier feeling joints and updated paint apps. Going over articulation, even though the joint setup is pretty much the same for both of them, we're still going to do Jake and Neytiri's articulation. Starting off with Jake's head sculpt, there's a double ball peg underneath the single piece neck that's part of his PVC sculpted torso. Looking forward to there, looking up to there, restricted by the sculpted braids. Then we've got swivel and tons of pivot side to side. His shoulders are on ball joints and hinges. Going up to there, soft ratchets, forward and back. There's a butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. No swivel at the bicep. Instead, they've integrated the swivel into the ratcheted single bend elbow. I suggest bending the elbow joint first, then using the forearm as leverage to move that swivel. For the elbow, it gets you to almost 90. The wrist peg is a ratcheted hinge and swivel. We've got two joints for the torso, one at the midsection and another at the waist. Crunching forward way further than I was expecting given the vest. Going back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. His legs are restricted by the PVC diaper piece. Going forward to there, going out to there. But if you drop them down on ratchets, you can now see the gap at the hips. His legs will go way further forward and further out as well. There is a swivel, but it's at the hip joint. This one is quite scary. Single bend at the knee on ratchets, going just past 90. Then a hinge and swivel for the ankles, good for forward and back rotation. And because it's plugged into the foot at an angle, we also get a little bit of ankle tilt out of it. Neytiri's turn. Starting off with her head sculpt, there's more range here. The PVC they've used for the neck is softer, so you can angle the head sculpt way further forward. There's a ratchet joint inside the PVC neck piece. Going back to there, also using that ratchet. Then we've got swivel and pivot side to side. Her arms will go up to there. That's a really stiff joint. Be super careful with it. Going forward and back. There's a little bit of butterfly action that also hinges up and down. Swivel at the elbow joint, single bend on ratchets going to 90. Then for the wrist peg, it's a ratcheted hinge and swivel. Now this is not an officially sanctioned point of articulation. Do this at your own risk. In fact, don't do this at all, because if someone does it and they break their figure, they're probably going to blame me. I'll show you anyway. If you want to get her in a bow and arrow pose, you really need a further than 90 bend at her elbows. To achieve that, because this is a visible joint figure, you can remove the elbow joint from the bicep socket just enough so that you can get a deeper bend from that elbow joint. It's quite gappy, it's very ugly, and you're putting a lot of pressure on that peg when you're trying to remove the arm from that socket. Another point of difference versus Jake. There's no joint at the waist because it would be way too visible, even though everything else is visible anyway, but there's a joint at the midsection only instead. Crunching forward to there, going back to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. Her legs drop down at the hips, just like Jake's, going forward, going out, swivel at that hip joint. Single bend at the knee, not on ratchets, getting you to 90. Hinge and swivel for the ankles, forward and back rotation, and because it's plugged in at an angle just like Jake's, we get some ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is, really, Hot Toys? Visible joints in 2024? Come on now. We know that you could have used medical silicone. Y'all know that you could have used medical silicone. So why the heck didn't you? These joints not only are visible, but they're really ugly. Like that joint right there, we've seen NECA integrate visible joints better than this. The second annoying thing is, while these diorama bases for the deluxe figures are beautiful, like unquestionably so, aesthetically speaking, they're stunning, they're not very functional as bases. As art pieces, yeah, they look gorgeous. But when you try and pop the figure's feet on them, there's this little spot right around the front that you can use, but even then their feet are constantly bumping into the plants. The third annoying thing isn't something that happens right out of the box normally, but it's been plaguing Hot Toys figures for a while. Mostly Tom Holland figures for some reason. It's the whiteness in the sculpt work for the hair. It's not supposed to be there. That's like oxidization or something from the surface coating they've used on the hair paint applications. You can wipe it off, but no matter what you do, eventually it is going to come back. The first cool thing is true for both Jake and Neytiri. They've got moving eyes. For a sculpt like this, as large as it is, with the eyes being as prominent as they are, they really needed to do this because there's so much fine detail that they can add onto the surface that will be revealed as you move the eyes around, like the red vein work around the edges. Being able to shift the eye position off to one side, for example, you can almost entirely change the expression. And that's why I've always been such a big advocate for moving eyes. The second cool thing, I still don't like visible joints in my Na'vi. I want seamless. At least they've tried to disguise that joint. You can see that they've printed that stripe over the top of her left elbow joint. The third cool thing is the detail on both of their weapons. Neytiri's bow with the elastic string and the tassel and the sculpted metallic feathers. But most importantly, the dust cover on Jake Sully's rifle sight and the spring-loaded charging handle and the translucent plastic window in the secondary sight off to one side. This is probably one of the most detailed rifles I've ever seen from them, and it's big. Wrapping up on Avatar: The Way of Water, Hot Toys, Jake Sully, and Neytiri. They gave us both, this time. When we got Jake from the first movie, everyone was clamoring for a Neytiri. Why did they only give us one figure from that film? I don't know, it's a head scratcher. But now we have her. And earlier on, I said that I'd let you know which of these two figures is my favorite. It's Neytiri. The sculpt has so much personality and life to it. It's got moving eyes. She doesn't have that weird oxidization thing that Jake has with his hair. And she's got slightly better articulation, especially for her PVC neck piece. With that being said, Jake is no slouch. If you've got the first one, and it's still in one piece, you're considering picking this one up, but you're not sure because the first one is still standing, yeah, I still think it's worth it. The new sculpt alone makes this figure a huge upgrade. And he's got moving eyes, which is part of the sculpt. But you know what I'm trying to say. Paint applications are better. There's not as much speckling on the skin, which we discussed, not a deal breaker for me. And he's new, which means if there's a shelf life on these, if they only last for X number of years, you're restarting the clock with this Jake Sully. You're not going to be staring at your 1.0 all the time, wondering if he's going to fall apart randomly. Is that still a problem with these new Avatar figures? They feel sturdy. But that's now. A couple of years from now, could be a problem. They've had time to figure out how to stabilize the blue plastic to make sure it doesn't break, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they've probably corrected the issue they were having with their 1.0 Jake Sullys. So, at the end of this, I don't think it's going to get much better than this. Grab these pieces before they're gone. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I've popped a link to their site in the description, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.